From Rwanda National Police Headquarters, the Symposium on Peace, Security and Justice, with the theme Mainstreaming Human Security in the New Security Landscape, a holistic approach to sustainable peace and development, was organized for participants of the Police Senior Command and staff corps from the National Police College. This deepens their grasp of the nexus between human security and sustainable peace and development.
This symposium, by and large, explores issues around security in its contemporary and dynamic nature, with a particular focus on human security as a fulcrum upon which efforts towards sustainable peace and development should be anchored. In these efforts, our panels will attempt to provide answers to such questions as: 1. How did the concept of security evolve in theory and practice, and what has been the role of security organs in its betterment? And 2, what can be done to keep pace with human security imperatives in the face of a never-changing security landscape? It is expected that by the end of this symposium, the audience will have been enlightened on the above queries, or they will leave with more complex questions that will prompt further research and examinations for future symposia.
The Minister of Justice and the guest of honor addressed the participants during the opening ceremony, where he said,
"The security, political and socio-economic dynamics on our continent have a bearing on the continent's different regions and indeed on individual countries' state of affairs and security. If security, especially its human aspect, is the fulcrum upon which efforts towards development are anchored, it is only logical that when the two are combined, the outcome leads to progress, which is the ultimate objective that we struggle for. Therefore, it is evident that ensuring security in a comprehensive manner requires that police officers at strategic level are equipped with necessary tools in both aspects of professional knowledge and a deep understanding of the nexus between national, regional, as well as global security, particularly the human dimension and the bearing it has on development. It is in the spirit of the latter aspect that this symposium, with the theme Mainstreaming Human Security in the New Security Landscape, makes its contribution for the attention of participants to this high-quality course. Undeniably, there is no better way to enrich participants' grasp of issues around peace, security, justice, good governance, and development than by availing a platform that allows for the sharing of experience with distinguished scholars, policymakers, and other eminent officials whose work greatly influence the shaping of norms in the spheres relevant to this course. This assertion becomes particularly pertinent when it comes to course participants who are senior officers at strategic level in the domain of law enforcement, which is one of the fundamentals in the subject matter under scrutiny today. I believe our gathering here with the sole purpose of enlightenment constitutes such a platform and enables the conversation to happen.
Dr. Chen Kamthai shared his view of the revolutionary nature of security and corresponding challenges.
The new security horizon that presents itself. My task is then to go towards what led to this change. The change was inevitable, and I can assure you it still remains inevitable. It's either we change or we are swept by this change. During the Cold War, so that the long history doesn't bog us, we start with the Cold War. The main or dominant theory that was explaining the environment was the realist theory. And the realist theory carried the day because it talked about the state. So even our definition of security was pegged on the state. The referent point and the object of security was the state. And realism had its own weaknesses. Realism never looked at inside the state. It never opened this Pandora box. So the content of that Pandora box called the state are immaterial. And it is true, the content remained immaterial. So realism focused on the state as a unitary actor, as a moving object that acts together. So in this definition of the state then, in this definition of security, security then was security of the state. And the only thing that mattered then was those who would be seen as the state.
Honorable Minister of Defense came in with the evolving role of military forces in human security.
The RDF recognizes that human security forms the basic foundation of the entire national defense and security. This forms the rationale for the defense intervention in various areas of human security. The defense intervention for the past years has been in the fields of health, education, agriculture, habitation, infrastructure, and other poverty eradication programs. This has been possible because of one very important factor: collaboration with other government institutions. Smooth collaboration with other government institutions. This happens because the environment permits. The RDF has not enough resources to do all these programs, to implement all these programs. In some cases, the RDF only works as a catalyst for this positive change. The rest is done by the population or by other institutions. Other government institutions contribute to the resources, and the RDF does the implementation. A case in point is the implementation of the IDP model villages, the model villages that we build all over the country.
Rwanda National Police's community policing model as a case study set an example on people-centered policing and human security.
I should probably highlight some of the 7 human security components. And these include the economic security, food security, health security, environmental security, personal security, community security, as well as political security. So, on another hand, we are required also to understand the community policing or the known people-centered policing and how this also is linked to human security. And this is a strategy of policing that focuses on building ties, partnerships, relationships, and working closely with the members of the community with a strategy to reduce crime and improve people's welfare. So for the case study of Rwanda National Police, of course, we follow the government policy on community policing and the related implementation programs. The government has laid policies, ministerial instructions, and developed the models of how we should move and incorporating the community policing in our policing strategies. And I should mention here that out of 6 Rwanda National Police key priorities, we consider the policing as one of the important elements, and it has been factored into our security policing architecture.
It is widely agreed that security good governance and development, particularly its human aspect, have become increasingly intertwined that neither can be successfully achieved without the other.
This governance that we are talking about, why are governments instituted amongst men? Why at all? Why do we have governments instituted amongst men? Whether it was in the traditional society or in the non-traditional society. And I've always found favor with what is a part of the American Declaration of Independence in this regard. Why do I choose America? Because this is a state created uniquely out of migrants. And if you look at their Declaration of Independence, I think it says in part that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are born equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain alienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that governments are instituted amongst men, that they may protect these rights, and that if any government were to go against these rights, the people reserve the right to abolish those governments. So it would appear that governments are instituted amongst men to help men to pursue liberty and happiness. And that to me then underlines the very essence of why we are trying to relate governance and personal security. In other words, therefore, when men have entered into a contract with those whom they have chosen to preside over their affairs, those individuals who run the thing called a government hold power in trust for them to achieve certain declared things. And in the modern society, we have chosen that there is a document called the Constitution. That this document called the Constitution defines, if you may, the contours of power and allocates responsibilities to each organ of the state, having accepted also that in order to run government in the modern era, we need the state to have certain fundamentals.
Operationalizing human security, Rwanda's homegrown initiative in perspective.
In Rwanda's context, His Excellency, the President, after the genocide, has given us 3 strategic choices that Rwanda made to recover from the genocide of 1994. Those 3 choices we made, or each of them addresses aspect of human security. The choice number 1 was about unity of Rwandans choosing to stay together, because unity was the contrary of the mistrust and destruction we have gone through the genocide. The second choice was about accountability, and that means that we are accountable to ourselves, but also accountable to our people. And if we are accountable to our people, we have to address the human needs, including human security.
Dr. Josephine Odera gave an insight on mainstreaming gender in Africa's human security framework.
The growth of gendered analysis in the security sector has had a compelling effect on development in security, including peace operations, the treatment of gender-based violence, access to power through representation in politics and decision-making, amongst others. All confirming that the issue of human security, the framework, is a valid one for addressing gender mainstreaming.
As though the day's activities were exhausted, Ambassador Olivier Fischer closed the symposium, and he said,
when we fight against discrimination, when we empower the most vulnerable groups in our societies through affirmative actions, groups such as youth, women, minorities, and other communities that are historically marginalized, it ultimately leads to poverty reduction and the end of marginalization, which are key factors in reducing human insecurity. Additionally, governments should promote the common good among various stakeholders, mostly taking stewardship in the leadership as part of a strategy to sustain development and peace. Stewardship leads us to provide a responsible leadership in planning and managing resources for the common good. For example, providing adequate infrastructures, jobs and government services, or setting up measures for the protection of the environment. As Professor Shaka said, ensuring political inclusion and power sharing is also an incentive to avoid conflict, to avoid confrontational politics, and institutionalize dialogue and consensus to build sustainable peace. This is an important principle that is a principle of consensual democracy and dialogue that is enshrined in our Constitution.
In this dynamic global setting, the increasingly inextricable linkages between security imperatives and other national priorities such as good governance, sustainable development and prosperity have not only put scholars to task to come up with a more comprehensive explanation of security, but also have been the roles of actors in the realm of security expanded from mere protection from violence to include individual well-being considerations in the broader perspective.